Okay, well, I'm delighted to welcome to Dukascopy TV Dr. James Green, Managing Director and Chief Compliance Officer, I believe, of FXDD. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here. As part of the white label partnership between Dukascopy Bank and FXDD, we've had the chance to interview a couple of your colleagues about how this partnership is affecting traders. But I know you've got quite a unique perspective and insight to give us on legislation and regulation and how it's affecting the FX industry. It's over a year now since the Dodd-Frank reforms were signed into law, but the implementation is obviously still ongoing. Where are we at the moment? What are the current challenges and obstacles that the implementation is facing, and what are you having to deal with?
For the foreign exchange market, Dodd-Frank certainly has an impact. You have to keep in mind, in the United States we have two regulators. We have the CFTC, which is the government agency, and then the National Futures Association, which is a private regulatory organization. The CFTC has oversight over the NFA. So the real effect for us as retail foreign exchange brokers, or primarily retail foreign exchange market makers, has been with NFA rules. If you remember, we used to be able to have any type of leverage that we wanted. You know, you could have 400 to 1, 500 to 1. It really wasn't regulated. Now we're reduced to 50 to 1, although it hasn't had a real dramatic change on our business. Certainly not as dramatic as we thought it would be. We have to, now all trades are offset according to FIFO. There's no more special offset privileges. There can be no hedging in the United States for U.S. customers under NFA rules. So we see the regulatory environment as constantly evolving in the United States. We don't necessarily agree with all the changes, but we certainly are in favor of regulation because it keeps the business orderly. The NFA has done a really good job, a solid job of testing and auditing and suggesting and sort of policing the business. I think without their involvement, the FX business would not be where it is today. And I say that in a positive fashion. And on the CFTC side, there are some changes that were made and some changes that have been proposed that will affect our business, but not in the dramatic ways that we first envisioned that they would be. I think there will be more subtle changes. The Dodd-Frank provisions will have greater effect, for instance, on banking.
You mentioned regulating is not easy. I know in America at the moment, and in fact globally, there's a lot of talk about the US Republican race for the nomination. A lot of the candidates there have said that they would repeal Dodd-Frank. Do you think that's feasible, and would that have a big impact on the changes that you've already had to make?
The president is powerful, but he has to answer to Congress or work with Congress. So to the extent that the Republicans would win the Congress, the House and the Senate, then there might be a chance to repeal parts of it. I don't think that they would repeal the entire law, because not everybody wants the entire law repealed. Some of it, perhaps parts of it, could be rewritten. It's like any other regulatory experience. You have to be able to go through it and understand how it's going to affect the operation of the business. And you can create these theoretical constructs, but they have no real meaning until you try to put them into place.
I understand there's going to be a new partnership between FXDD Europe and Dukascopy Bank. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what the aims will be? When
we started discussing from the U.S. perspective the use of your technology and your platform, how could we license that technology? I think it's evolved that the JTrader platform is a very good, solid platform for us. Clients like it. They like its performance. They certainly like its features and its facilities. And we find that now that we have gained some traction in the United States, it was the obvious conclusion that there's no reason why we shouldn't continue that relationship in our other jurisdictions. But we think it's going to be a very solid relationship because we share a lot of the same values in terms of technology, in terms of focus, and in terms of trying to create that maximum beneficial environment in which our clients can trade. So there's a symbiotic relationship that's been developed based, I think, primarily on personalities and technology. Finally then, on working in Europe,
What are specifically the, sort of the legal and competitive advantage that FXDD can have by having a base in Europe?
Well, when our principals made the decision that we needed to establish a presence in another jurisdiction, we looked at Ireland, we looked at London, we looked at a lot of places. We wanted to be within the EU so that we would have the passport capabilities throughout the EU. We found that the environment here or in the EU, and Malta in particularly, was much more welcoming to us. There was not this adversarial notion. And it's certainly not to suggest that all relationships in the United States are necessarily adversarial. They're not. But there seems to be a willingness to understand what it is that we do on a regulatory side and let us help them shape their rules to fit our business.
Okay, well, Dr. Green, thank you very much for joining us at Dukascopy TV, and best of luck to the continuing relationship between FXDD and Dukascopy Bank. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.